What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Once again, where we reveal hardware and see if it can game or not. You see my disgusting face back once again, and today we're going to be taking a look to see if some old school Dell OEM Radeon graphics cards can play games in Crossfire. So I've had this one cooking up in the oven quite a while. I have a really interesting video for you guys, and it involves this card here. Now this graphics card is called the AMD Radeon HD 7470. So these were actually the first graphics cards I really ever bought used, and I actually got them as a pair for $3 because they're so shit that people will just literally give them to you. They're that bad. So I got them fairly cheap, like I said, $3, and I've never used them since. I basically just bought them and I put them away. And I got these cards about 2 years ago, and they've just been hanging around. And I was watching Budget Builds' video recently, and he said that if the video card at least is Terascale 2, it will be able to crossfire. So he did a video on some really terrible graphics cards called the Radeon HD 5450. I'll link to that video in the description. It's very interesting. And that got me thinking. I've had these ugly ass old GPUs for quite a long time. What the hell? Let's do some crossfire with these. The Kaiko's graphics processor, specifically the GPU variant Callister graphics card, is based on the Terascale 2 architecture. It has a 40 nanometer process size, 370 million transistors, and was released on January 5th, 2012. The card is still actively produced to this day. The GPU supports DirectX 11, runs at 750 MHz base clock, and has 160 shading units. AMD also chose to put 1GB of GDDR5 running at 3600 MHz effective clock on the GPU. Graphics card is a half-height single-slot graphics card that has 27 watts of total power draw through the PCIe slot with one DVI port and one display port. It is also worth pointing out that this card is a rebranded 6450, was only manufactured by OEMs only, and there is a Sapphire 2GB version. And the three other variants of the graphics card that are out there all have GDDR3, and the one Sapphire version has 2GB of GDDR3. We are going to be using our old school X58 test bench that we've used for over a year on the channel. It has a 4-core 8-thread Intel Xeon E5540 overclocked to 4.1 GHz. It also has 18GB of DDR3 at 1640 MHz. We also finally installed an SSD to help speed up our boot times and get through the benchmarks faster to bring you guys more videos. Along with overclocking, I did a couple of tweaks. I got the core up to 870 MHz on both cards, and the memory clock up to 1070 MHz on both the cards. I also put the texturing filtering quality on performance and the tessellation level on off. If you look on the top right, there's a little additional settings bar up there. You have to click that and go in there and go all the way to the bottom to find the Enable AMD Crossfire button. As everybody knows, Crossfire sucks absolute. It doesn't work very well, but still. Let's take two of the worst $3 graphics cards that I have lying around and see what they can do in Crossfire. So now it is time to take a look at some games. And first up, we have Grand Theft Auto 5, one of my favorite benchmarks of all time, running at 1280 by 720 on normal settings. The game ran at an impressive 57.2 frames per second with a maximum of 173 and a minimum of 47. I have benchmarked this street in Grand Theft Auto hundreds and hundreds of times with hundreds of different pieces of technology. And let me tell you this right now. I have never been this impressed with two terrible graphics cards in Crossfire, mind you, perform this well. Yes, I know it's only 720p normal settings, but take a gander at the screen right now, because this is what amazing optimization looks like. I have never, ever seen graphics cards perform like this that are this bad. Truly one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. Next up, we have Battlefield 1 with 1024 by 768 on the lowest settings with all the special chromatic aberration and motion blur special effects settings turned off. And we got an average of 21.7 FPS with a maximum of 27 and a minimum of 14. Sadly, you seem to average 20 FPS with 17470 working, and it was pretty terrible. Mind you, it was a smooth terrible, but it was still terrible. Feeling hyped up, we're going to Overwatch right now with 1280 by 720 on the low preset. We got an average of 46.3 FPS with a maximum of 70 and a minimum of 30. So the game may look uglier than Sarah Huckabee Sanders' right eyeball. We still did get 46.3 average frames per second, and the game was actually pretty smooth, and I was tearing kids up with Soldier 76.
Straight up, I don't give a fuck. Down for it up. Down for it up.
So we got League of Legends next on 1920 by 1080 on the medium-high settings without anti-aliasing. Getting my inner Korean on, I got 142.5 average frames per second with a maximum of 185 and a minimum of 112. Now, League of Legends was actually using both of our GPUs, so I actually recorded some non-overclocked results, and we got 118.6 average frames per second compared to 142 with the overclock. Booting up Cuphead was actually a really pleasant experience at 1920 by 1080. The game ran at 49.5 average frames per second with a maximum of 61 and a minimum of 27. The game was usually running at 60 FPS though, and I accidentally had VSync on, so sometimes when there were really big explosions, the game would drop down, but the game was really smooth for the most part.
My mama ain't shit and my daddy ain't shit. Give a fuck about me, so as soon as you trip, run up on them like.
So now my hunt began in Far Cry Primal to try and find games that would support Crossfire, which is actually kind of a difficult task in 2017. However, at 720p lowest settings, Far Cry Primal averaged 23 FPS with a maximum of 26 and a minimum of 21. I finally got around to installing Prey, a game which I needed to add to my benchmark library for some time now. I ran it at 1024 by 768 on the lowest settings. At these settings, Crossfire didn't actually work, unfortunately, even though it's an AMD title, but we got an average of 22 frames per second with a maximum of 44 and a minimum of 13. Only one graphics card is being utilized, and I couldn't get the other one to work, but I actually played this game for quite a long time, even on this one GPU at the really shit settings, and I was actually having quite a bit of fun. This brought back a lot of memories of when I used to play on my really old Alienware laptop that was really old. And Payday 2 actually ran kind of like this game did, and I was just having fun. I actually played all the way through an entire level, and I had a lot of fun. So I know I'm talking quite a bit over this benchmark, but I just thought that was kind of interesting, and that, you know, PC parts aren't always the biggest part of playing games. Playing games is the biggest part of playing games. So I was finishing up my benchmarking session, and I really wanted to see these cards be pushed to their limit. So I fired up the old school Battlefield Bad Company 2 at 1920 by 1080 on the medium settings. The gameplay on the ground was just like playing a console, except it was amazing looking. And this was really impressive because it supported the Crossfire, and it played like an absolute dream on our shit graphics cards. That's right, biker. So for the final benchmark, I took a look at 3D Mark Firestrike. With the overclock, we scored an overall score of 846 with a graphics score of 925. And we got an achievement from 3D Mark telling me that my graphics cards are shit. And without the overclock, we scored 678 with a graphics score of 692. Now, I know that the scores are actually really close together, but if you think about it, these graphics cards are extremely weak, and if you think about a 692 to a 925 point difference, that's actually quite a lot just for turning up some sliders in MSI Afterburner. Now that I've tested a bunch of games, I can finally come to the conclusion on whether you should buy a Radeon HD 7470, much less Crossfire. So you know what? I gave this card a lot of shit in the beginning of the video, but you know what? The thing actually performs pretty fucking good, in my opinion, because, like, if you think about it, $3 is $3, and $3 is, like, what you would pay to get a burger from McDonald's, and if you can put a graphics card in your system that can play League of Legends at, like, 100 FPS by itself on high 1080p, then that's pretty good. So I don't have a lot of gripes with this graphics card, to be honest, and when the Crossfire actually worked, it worked really well, like, really impressively well. Like, my God, I sound like Donald Trump right here, but, like, I just was flabbergasted by how this thing performed when it was utilized correctly. Like, yes, GTA was playing at 60 FPS 720p, but that's really impressive for a card this slow. I mean, this thing is compared to HD 4400 graphics, man. Like, it's really slow. And I'm really thinking that the GDDR5 is really helping out here. If this card was GDDR3, it'd be a real problem. But I have no gripes with it. If you can get maybe one of the cards by themselves for $1, or, you know, $2, $3, $4, $5 like that, then perfectly viable option. It's not a bad graphics card in my opinion. Smash that like button if you love life. Smash that fucking dislike button if you hate life. Smash that subscribe button if you had a great time here and you want to catch more GPU videos from me. Now, with that said, join the Budget Builds Discord. Great place to talk about budget tech. Definitely suggest you go check that out. Going to be in the description down below. With that said, this has been Icebergs, another GPU review done in the bag. Hope you guys had a great time. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you still watching this video? Smash that fucking like button, you idiot. Smash that subscribe button. What are you doing? Go watch my other videos.